Seems to me that when I'm feeling anxious, I would say probably 99% of the time, whatever I'm feeling anxious about ends up not even happening. Whatever thoughts are raging in my mind, it tends to be something that is unrealistic or impossible or just something that is not worth the mental energy, and it proves to be not worth the mental energy because the thing that I'm concerned about ends up not even happening. And so I want to briefly talk about the futility in being anxious, the pointlessness of it. Now, there is, I think, built into us this healthy fear, if you will. One of the most well-known analogies is like if the stove is hot and you're a kid and you touch the stove and it hurts your hand, you now have that healthy fear of like, okay, I know I'm not going to touch that stove again because I'm afraid I'm going to get hurt. Right? So I think there is a healthy anxiety built into us, but what I'm talking about is the more unhealthy anxiety, the paranoia, the fear, the worry, the doubt, the anxiety that keeps you up at night, the anxiety that prevents you from doing things that otherwise you would love to attempt to do, trying new things, anxiety that prevents you from stepping out and doing something you always wanted to do. That anxiety that 9 times out of 10 is something that isn't real, isn't based in reality. And so in Matthew 6, the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus talks quite a bit about being anxious. And he gets done speaking about serving two masters, God and money, and how if you serve one, you can't really serve the other. And then he goes right into talking about provision, food and clothing, and how that's something that in this world can cause great concern for us, being anxious about when's my next meal, or what am I going to wear, or how much money am I going to have. And those are just the examples that he gave because at the time those were real concerns for those people. They didn't know sometimes when the next meal was going to come, or they had only a few sets of clothing, and if a pair of clothing got ruined or damaged, that would be a real concern for them. Where would my next article of clothing, my next garment come from? And so, whoa, sorry. Just looking across my field here, and there's a big, hefty raccoon in the middle of the day for some reason. That's a big raccoon. Wow. Anyway, pardon the wind also if it's kind of windy. I don't have a mic. This is just off my phone, but hopefully it's still hearable, if that's a word. Anyway, so he gets done telling them not to be anxious for those things because God provides for the birds of the air, right? He's built into animals. Specifically, he uses the birds as an example. This natural instinct to go out and find food, and God puts the food in the world for them to go find. So it's not like there's no effort on the part of the birds, right? They have this instinct built into them to go and find the food, but God puts the food there, right? So it is all from him, the instinct and the actual food itself. And then he says to look at the grass of the field and how it's just there. It doesn't have to do anything, and it's arrayed beautifully. And he goes on to say, which of you, by being anxious, can add a single hour to his span of life? Right? And I was reading that this morning before I went on a run, and I just thought, how interesting. If you really think about that phrase, how interesting, how profound is that statement? Because if you just really think about those words for a moment, I'm anxious about, we'll say, for example, what if my house catches on fire and it burns down and my whole family dies? I'm anxious about that, right? how is me being anxious about that going to prevent my house from catching on fire? Well, I could go to extreme measures and fireproof my house, make sure everything's insulated well, and I have correct materials that are fireproof, and I can go to all the stops and the measures. But at the end of the day, there's a hypothetical out there where I'm not home one day and it's raining out, lightning strikes my house, boom, and then all of a sudden everything goes up in flames and people are asleep, they don't catch it in time, and the house gets burned down, right? The list of hypotheticals for whatever anxious thought you're having is infinite. You can hypothetical on hypothetical on hypothetical all day long, and you're gonna drive yourself crazy, because I do that often, very often. And so if not for anybody else, this video is also just for me to hear. But the futility in being anxious is so real, because I can't do anything to prevent the hypothetical on hypothetical from happening. There's not enough stops that I can go to prevent every single bad thing that is ever going to be possible from happening. And so if I drive myself crazy and try to prevent every false future, every anxious scenario, everything that I'm worried about from happening, at the end of the day, I'm just going to die eventually, right? Think about it. I can do all the things. I can make sure that I'm as safe as possible, that I have all the food, all the clothing I need, that I have shelter, that I have every single thing in line so that I can have the best, safest, most anxiety-free life, most sheltered life as possible here on Earth. But at the end of the day, when it's my time to die, it's my time. When it's my time to do whatever I have to do, it's my time that I have to do that thing. So I can't add a single hour to my span of life by being anxious. And at the end of the passage in Matthew, Jesus goes on to say, seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all the things that you need, the food, the shelter, the clothing, are going to be added to you. Going back to the birds, right? It's like they're not anxious. They know that, okay, I have to go out, I have to go eat, so I'm going to go find food. And the food that I'm going to go find, God has put there for me. So I think it's the same thing with us, right? God has given us food and shelter and clothing. We have to go work for it, right? But at the end of the day, if we're anxious, what is that going to accomplish? It's not going to accomplish anything. And in the very last verse, Matthew 6:34, Jesus says, don't think about tomorrow, because tomorrow has enough trouble for itself. Focus on today, essentially. My cat just stopped by. Hello, Goose. This is Goose. You think Goose is anxious right here? Goose is not anxious. Goose hangs out outside all day, and he does his thing. He just hangs out. Look at how chill this guy is. Look at how pretty he is, too, right? And he comes to me and my wife for food. He knows where his food comes from, and he's not anxious about it, and he's totally dependent on us and on things that God has placed outside here for him to live off of and eat, like the mice and whatever other critters he likes to eat. But just a nice little impromptu example of the dependence of the creature on the creator, kind of a thing. And so I think that's the same for us, right? If we're focused on tomorrow, like in that last verse, if we're focused on the future, there is an infinite amount of what ifs, hypotheticals that could happen. This could go wrong. What if this person does this? What if this person thinks that way? What if? And at the end of the day, it's pointless to worry about that, because number one, you can't cover all of the what ifs. There's just too many. And then number two, at the end of the day, whatever the Lord's will is will be accomplished, and what's going to happen is going to happen. And so those are my brief thoughts on the futility of being anxious. There is nothing good that can be accomplished by having that kind of bad anxiety, right? Focus on the present. I think that's kind of the whole point of that passage in Matthew. What Jesus was saying is, okay, focus on what's in front of you. God will meet your needs. And if you're seeking first his kingdom, you have double assurance not to be worried about provision, about food, about clothing, about whatever situation you might be facing. And facing different situations is a whole other video that I'd like to make, different trials, because that's a whole other topic in itself. But yeah, those are my brief thoughts on the futility of anxiety. There's nothing good that can be accomplished from worrying. You can't add to your life by being anxious. At the end of the day, I could just be hit by a bus tomorrow, and I could have done all this worrying about, I got to make sure I'm safe and sound forever. But in a moment, it could all just kind of go away. So be dependent on God for your provision. Be like the birds of the air, where they're just totally dependent on their creator for sustaining their life. Be like Goose, my cat, who just knows where he is safe. He knows where he gets his food. He's not worried about, what do I have to do, So anyway, read Matthew 6. That's all I got to say. God bless.